You're a legendary samurai warrior, trained from birth to value honor above life itself. Your master has just been murdered in cold blood by a corrupt government official. Japanese law says you must commit suicide to preserve your honor. Society expects you to die like a good little soldier. But instead, you make a choice that will shock an entire nation. You choose revenge over honor. You choose disgrace over death. You become a drunk, a beggar, a laughingstock, all part of the most elaborate revenge plot in human history. For 2 years, you live as a broken man while secretly planning the perfect murder. This isn't just a story about revenge. This is about 47 men who sacrifice everything, including their souls, to achieve the impossible. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these dishonored samurai became Japan's greatest heroes and why their story still makes grown men cry 300 years later. It's December 14, 1702, feudal Japan, the most rigid honor-based society in human history. In this world, your reputation isn't just important, it's literally more valuable than your life. Samurai would rather die than face dishonor. They lived by a code called Bushido, where loyalty, honor, and duty were everything. Breaking this code meant you are worse than dead. You are nothing. But our story begins 1 year earlier, in the golden halls of Edo Castle, where the most powerful men in Japan gathered for the most important ceremony of the year. The shogun himself was receiving imperial messengers, and everything had to be perfect. Protocol was everything. One mistake could mean death. Enter our main character, not a rebel or a revolutionary, but the most loyal samurai you could imagine. Asano Naganori, the Lord of Akko, a man so honorable that other samurai looked up to him, so respected that he was chosen to represent his entire region at this sacred ceremony. He was everything a samurai should be, until the day that destroyed his life forever. The ceremony required precise etiquette, and Asano needed guidance from the master of protocol, Kira Yoshinaka. But here's where our story takes a dark turn. Wasn't just any official, he was corrupt, greedy, and expected bribes for doing his job. When Asano refused to pay him, Kira made a decision that would change Japanese history forever. Picture the most important day of your career. You're representing your people, your family name, everything you've worked for. And then your supervisor, the one person supposed to help you, deliberately sabotages you in front of everyone who matters. That's exactly what Kira did to Asano. In front of the shogun, the imperial messengers, and the most powerful people in Japan, Kira publicly humiliated Asano. He gave him wrong information about protocol. He mocked his clothes, his manners, his intelligence. He treated this honorable lord like a peasant, knowing Asano couldn't fight back without breaking sacred law. For hours, Asano endured this psychological torture. Every insult was calculated. Every humiliation was designed to break him. Kira knew that in the castle, Asano was powerless. Violence in the shogun's presence meant instant death, but every man has a breaking point. After hours of abuse, when Kira called Asano a country fool unfit to stand in civilized company, something inside this honorable samurai finally snapped. Asano drew his sword and attacked Kira in the sacred halls of Edo Castle. The sound of steel being drawn in the shogun's presence was like thunder. Guards rushed in. The ceremony stopped. The imperial messengers froze in horror. Asano had just committed the one unforgivable sin in Japanese society. He had drawn his blade in the presence of the shogun. But here's the tragic part. Asano only wounded Kira. He didn't kill him. In his rage and honor, he couldn't bring himself to commit cold-blooded murder. This mercy would cost him everything. The shogun's judgment was swift and merciless. Asano would die by seppuku, ritual suicide, that very day. His lands would be confiscated. His family would be destroyed. His 300 samurai retainers would become ronin, masterless warriors with no purpose, no income, no honor. But here's what made it worse. Kira received no punishment. None. The man who had provoked this entire disaster through corruption and cruelty was allowed to keep his position, his wealth, his life. The victim was executed, and the villain was rewarded. As Asano knelt in the castle courtyard, preparing to end his life with his own sword, he looked at his most trusted retainer, Oishi Kuranosuke. With his final breath, Asano whispered words that would haunt Oishi forever. "Avenge me." Then Asano Naganori died, taking his honor with him, but leaving behind a debt that could never be repaid through normal means. News of Asano's death spread across Japan like wildfire. His 300 retainers faced an impossible choice. Japanese law was clear. When your master dies, you must follow him in death to preserve your honor. Society expected them to commit mass seppuku and join their lord in the afterlife. Most of them did exactly that. They chose death over dishonor, as good samurai should. But 47 men made a different choice. 47 men decided that revenge was more important than honor. They chose to live as dishonored ronin rather than die as honored samurai. This decision would make them the most famous warriors in Japanese history. Leading these 47 men was Oishi Kuranosuke, Asano's chief retainer and the most respected samurai in the domain. But Oishi faced an impossible problem. Kira wasn't just any man, he was under the shogun's protection. He lived in a fortified mansion in Edo, surrounded by guards and spies. The government was watching for any sign of revenge. Any direct attack would fail and bring destruction to their families. Any obvious plotting would mean execution before they could act. They needed a plan so subtle, so patient, so psychologically brilliant that no one would see it coming. So Oishi made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. This legendary warrior, this model of samurai virtue, deliberately destroyed his own reputation. He became everything a samurai should never be. Oishi started drinking heavily in public. He frequented brothels and gambling houses. He abandoned his family and lived like a vagrant. When other samurai saw him stumbling drunk through the streets, they turned away in disgust. The man who had once commanded 300 warriors was now a laughing stock. But this wasn't weakness. This was the most brilliant psychological warfare in Japanese history. Oishi understood something crucial about human psychology. People stopped watching threats that seemed pathetic. If Kira's spies saw Oishi as a broken drunk, they would stop reporting on him. If the government saw him as a coward, they would stop monitoring him. His disgrace was his camouflage. For months, Oishi played this role perfectly. He would stagger through the streets, mumbling about sake and women. He would pass by Kira's mansion, not as a warrior, planning revenge, but as a pitiful drunk who had given up on life. Kira's spies reported back, "Oishi is finished. He's no threat to anyone. He can barely stand up, let alone lead an attack." Meanwhile, Oishi was secretly communicating with his 46 companions. They were scattered across Japan, all playing similar roles. Some became merchants, others became laborers. They abandoned their samurai appearance and blended into society as common people. But beneath their disguises, they were preparing for war. The 47 spent months studying Kira's mansion. They memorized guard rotations, mapped escape routes, identified weaknesses. They acquired weapons piece by piece, storing them in secret locations. They practiced their assault in hidden locations, perfecting every detail. Most importantly, they studied Kira himself, his habits, his fears, his schedule. They learned that he was paranoid about assassination, but had grown overconfident as months passed without incident. But the psychological cost was devastating. These men weren't just pretending to be disgraced. In the eyes of society, they actually were disgraced. Their families faced shame and poverty. Their children were mocked at school. Their wives were treated as widows of cowards. Oishi's own son begged him to restore the family honor through seppuku. His wife left him, unable to bear the shame. Former friends crossed the street to avoid him. He had become everything he had once despised. Yet Oishi never broke character. Even when his heart was breaking, Even when his family was suffering, he continued the charade, because he knew that their master's spirit wouldn't rest until justice was served. The other 46 warriors faced similar torment. They watched their reputations crumble, their families suffer, their entire identities disappear. But they held onto one truth: their mission was more important than their individual honor. This is what made them different from every other samurai in Japanese history. They chose collective justice over individual honor. They chose their master's memory over their own reputations. December 14, 1702, exactly 1 year after Asano's death. Tokyo is covered in snow, and the city sleeps peacefully. Kira Yoshinaka feels safe in his fortified mansion, surrounded by guards and high walls. His spies have assured him that the Akko Ronin are broken men, no longer capable of coherent thought, let alone coordinated action. He couldn't have been more wrong. At 4 a.m., when the night is darkest and the guards are sleepest, 47 shadows move through the snowy streets of Edo. They were matching black and white outfits, the colors of death and purity. Each man carries the weapons of his specialty: swords, spears, bows, and axes. Leading them is Oishi Kuranasuke. But this isn't the drunk from the streets. This is a samurai commander in his full glory, his eyes burning with righteous fury, his movements precise and deadly. They approach Kira's mansion from 2 directions. The plan is perfect. They've rehearsed it 100 times. Some will scale the walls, others will force the gates. They will sweep through the compound like a tsunami of vengeance. The attack begins in complete silence. Guards are neutralized before they can cry out. Doors are forced without creaking. The 47 move like ghosts through the mansion, searching every room, every hiding place. But Kira isn't in his bed. He isn't in his study. The coward has hidden somewhere in his own house, trembling like the rat he always was. The search intensifies. Room by room, the Ronin tear apart the mansion. Kira's retainers try to fight back, but they're facing men who have sacrificed everything for this moment. The 47 are unstoppable, not because they're better warriors, but because they're already dead inside. They have nothing left to lose. Finally, Oishi finds a hidden storage room behind the kitchen. Inside, cowering among sacks of rice, is Kira Yoshinaka, the corrupt official who destroyed their lord and ruined their lives. The moment Oishi had dreamed of for 2 years had arrived. Face to face with his master's killer, the man who had caused so much suffering, the coward who had hidden behind power and privilege. Oishi offered Kira the same honor that Asano had been given, the chance to die by seppuku with dignity. He placed a knife before Kira and waited. But Kira was no samurai. He begged for his life. He offered money, land, anything to avoid death. This man who had shown no mercy to Asano now pleaded for mercy himself. When it became clear that Kira would never choose honor, Oishi made the final decision. With the same sword that Asano had used for his seppuku, Oishi ended Kira's life with one clean strike. The revenge was complete. Justice had been served. Their master could finally rest in peace. But the 47 Ronin knew their story wasn't over. They had just committed murder in defiance of the shogun's law. They were criminals now, regardless of their motives. Instead of fleeing, they did something that shocked the entire nation. They marched to Asano's grave, carrying Kira's head as proof of their success. There, they knelt before their master's tomb and reported their mission complete. Then they surrendered themselves to the authorities. The entire nation was stunned. These men had achieved the impossible. They had avenged their master and restored his honor. But in doing so, they had broken the law and must face the consequences. For months, Japan debated their fate. Some called them criminals who deserved execution. Others called them heroes who embodied the true spirit of Bushido. The shogun himself was torn between upholding the law and honoring their loyalty. The final decision honored both justice and mercy. The 47 Ronin would be allowed to die by seppuku rather than execution, preserving their honor while paying for their crime. On February 4, 1703, all 47 men committed ritual suicide. They died as they had lived, together, loyal to their master, unbroken in spirit. But death wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of their legend. The Japanese people, who had watched these men sacrifice everything for loyalty and justice, declared them national heroes. Their graves became shrines. Their story became the most famous tale in Japanese culture. They proved that sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to serve true justice. They showed that real honor isn't about following society's expectations. It's about doing what's right, regardless of the cost. The 47 Ronin had started as dishonored men living in shame. They ended as the most honored warriors in Japanese history. Their sacrifice transformed them from criminals into saints, from Ronin into legends. This story teaches us something profound about the difference between reputation and character, between what society expects and what justice demands. The 47 Ronin understood that sometimes you have to lose everything to gain what really matters. They chose long-term justice over short-term honor. They chose their master's memory over their own comfort. In your own life, when you face impossible choices between what's easy and what's right, remember these 47 men. Remember that true honor isn't about what others think of you. It's about what you think of yourself when you look in the mirror. They proved that patience, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment can overcome any obstacle, that loyalty means more than life itself, and that sometimes the greatest victories require the greatest sacrifices. The next time someone tells you that one person can't change the world, remind them of 47 dishonored samurai who became eternal heroes by choosing justice over safety, revenge over reputation, and truth over comfort. Their story still moves people to tears 300 years later because it reminds us of something we all want to believe, that honor is worth any sacrifice, that justice will prevail, and that true loyalty is stronger than death itself. If this incredible tale of sacrifice, revenge, and ultimate honor gave you chills like it gave me, smash that like button and subscribe for more legendary stories that will restore your faith in human courage and determination. What other impossible acts of loyalty and justice do you want me to uncover? Drop your suggestions in the comments below.